Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So earlier this year I started doing some companion focused what ifs, specifically ones where companions stayed on for longer. I did this with both Liz Shaw and Sarah Kingdom, and now it's time to continue with another, Harry Sullivan. Harry, like Liz, was only companion for one season, well, a season and a bit anyway. He travelled with the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane for the whole of season 12, before staying behind at the end of the following season's first story, Terror of the Zygons. Despite this, he's become a fairly popular character among fans, and many wish that he'd stayed on for longer. So, what if things had gone differently? What if Harry Sullivan had stayed for season 13? Now, before we get into the scenario itself, let's first discuss why Harry Sullivan had such a short tenure. You see, originally, the 4th Doctor was going to be another older incarnation, and so the show would need a younger male companion to do all of the action scenes instead of the Doctor. So, basically, kind of like what Ian's role was in the 1st Doctor's first 2 seasons. Harry was then created for this exact purpose. But then Tom Baker was cast as the 4th Doctor, and he was a lot younger than had originally been intended for the character, so he was able to do all the action scenes himself, which made Harry's role pretty redundant and unnecessary, especially in the eyes of producer Philip Hinchcliffe. Script editor Robert Holmes disagreed with this, but he ultimately went with Hinchcliffe's wishes. So Harry was written out, with him choosing to stay behind on Earth at the end of Terror of the Zygons. But Hinchcliffe would later admit that it was wrong to get rid of Harry, and that Holmes had been right when he said that the character brought something unique and interesting to the show. So in terms of how Harry would stay on, it's actually fairly straightforward really. Holmes's thoughts could sway Hinchcliffe a lot sooner, and so they decide to let the character stay on anyway, even though his original purpose was no longer necessary. So Harry now decides to go back into the TARDIS at the end of Terror of the Zygons, along with Thor and Sarah. But how would his presence affect the rest of Season 13's stories? Well, I don't think most of them would need to be drastically altered in order to accommodate him better. He might add a tad bit more humour into them, but nothing that would fundamentally change their gothic horror nature. He'd already worked fine with a few gothic stories during season 12 after all. So this alternate season 13 wouldn't need to be all that different from what we got, just with Harry's kind of bumbling old-fashioned charm sprinkled into it. Maybe it's him that initially tries to shoot the Gelignite and blow up the rocket with the rifle in Pyramids of Mars, only for him to miss and Sarah to take over. The main difference would have to be to the android invasion. In our timeline, Harry was more of a returning guest star in that, but in this scenario, he's obviously still one of the regulars. So the whole stuff about his duplicate would need to be changed, perhaps taking on something similar to what happened with Sarah and her android duplicate. This means that when the Doctor reveals that he knew the android Sarah wasn't the real one in the episode 2 cliffhanger, he'd probably do the same with Harry's duplicate in the same scene, with the android Harry then trying to fight the Doctor, only for him to break free and run away from them both. I can also imagine Harry doing a quick medical examination on Winlet in the first few episodes of the Seeds of Doom, meaning that the medical team that is mentioned as being on their way might be called away by the others at the Antarctic base. I would have Harry leave at either the end of Seeds of Doom or the android invasion. I prefer the former personally, although it's fair enough if you prefer the latter, as it would mean we would get more time with the iconic pairing of Thor and Sarah Jane just on their own. He probably just decides to stay behind on Earth and return home, much like how he did with Zygons in our timeline. But yeah, this might not have made for the most in-depth or thought-provoking video, but I just can't imagine the season needing to be tweaked massively in order to better suit Harry and Ian Marter's portrayal of him, which I suppose says a lot about how easily he could have fitted into it. Sometimes with these types of scenarios, you might need to almost completely rework how a season would develop with the addition of one or more characters. But not in this case, as Harry Sullivan could quite easily have complemented the darker gothic horror of the Philip Hinchcliffe era. I mean, he proved that with Ark in Space, Genesis of the Daleks, and Terror of the Zygons. Yeah, sure, he could be a bit of an old-fashioned, slightly misogynistic imbecile,
Harry Sullivan is an imbecile!
but I think he could have continued to bring a bit more light and humour to the show during that time, with him sometimes being the subject of some teasing from both the Doctor and Sarah, as well as sometimes winding them up in return, especially with Sarah. And I think it speaks to how great Ian Marter portrayed him, that even though the character didn't arguably start off as being completely in line with the Hinchcliffe and Holmes vision of the show, he very quickly established Harry as occupying a unique place in the overall TARDIS team dynamic for season 12. And that definitely would have continued to have been the case if he'd stayed on for another year too. I just think it's a shame that we never got a chance to see that. But anyway, so there's my take on what if Harry Sullivan had stayed for season 13. But what do you think? Do you like my take on it or not? And would you have done anything differently? Please let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, hope you liked it. Please don't forget to press that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side of it, so you'll stay notified of when all my new videos come out. And feel free to join my Discord server where you can chat about anything from Doctor Who to what if scenarios, and just whatever you want really. You can find a link to it in a pinned comment below, and I shall see you all in another video. So until next time, bye bye!